We know how Billy the Kid looked because there exists one certain photo image of him. It's a full-body tintype and reveals much, and for better or worse, has influenced subsequent likenesses of that youth known as Billy Bonney. It's believed that this tintype was made in February of 1880, outdoors in Fort Sumner, by an itinerant tintype artist. Those photographers traveled in a horse-drawn tiny house containing living space, equipment, and a developing lab. Billy Bonney's padded, puffy clothing implies he had just returned from crossing the wintry Staked Plains from Texas, where he sold stock, which he guerrilla rustled from Santa Fe ring ranches. The tintype shows the photographer's setup with a painted canvas backdrop hung against the building's side. On the image's left, an assistant's hand holds a tall white reflector, placed carelessly too close to Billy, so appearing in the photo. Behind Billy was likely a head brace on a pole to prevent movement during the slow shutter speed. The wood-sided and bellowed camera, possibly an Anthony's Climax multiplying camera, would have had 4 lenses arranged in a square, 2 above, 2 below, casting 4 identical images on a 5-inch by 7-inch thin rolled iron tar-coated plate, which was covered with an emulsion of iodide of ammonium, bromide of cadmium, and light-sensitive silver nitrate. To be noted is that tintype images are right to left reversed, so what looks like Billy's left hand is his right. But that's why misled 20th century media wrongly called Billy a left-handed gunman. The photographer, after taking Billy's picture, would have slid out the metal plate. In his lab in the mobile house, he would develop the images by puddling the plate with distilled water, ferrous sulfate, and glacial acetic acid, then fix the images with cyanide of potassium. After drying, the plate was varnished and was cut with tin snips into the 4 identical 2.5-inch by 3.5-inch tintypes. Each would have been slipped into a paper frame. It's unknown if Billy bought all 4, since only the famous one is known. In his tintype pose, Clever Billy displays his ironic humor, his reputation as a gunman tough, and his sentimentality. As his bandana blows blurrily in the wind, he sneers and throws out his chest. Billy's rebelliously right-tipped strange black hat is likely the photographer's prop. It's seemingly a Carlsbad with a narrow brim and absurdly high crown, which Billy apparently beat down with a slanted karate-like chop. That city slicker style hat would have been useless for Billy's need sun and wind protection from a broad brim. In real life, Billy was known to wear a sombrero, compatible with his bicultural loyalty to Hispanic people. In fact, the same year as the tintype photo, when Sheriff Pat Garrett ambushed Billy and his companions at Stinking Springs on December 22, 1880, to carry out his Santa Fe ring mission to kill or capture Billy, he fatally shot Charlie Bowdry when the man emerged from the Rock House shelter wearing Billy's distinctive sombrero with a green band. Billy's sombrero wearing was so well known that Garrett mistook Charlie for Billy. To be noted is that Billy's forcefully right-tilted hat brim pushed out his right ear. Mid-20th century Billy the Kid imposter, Brushy Bill Roberts, who did have ears that stuck out, misunderstood the tintype situation and claimed his ears matched Billy's. In his Tintype, gun-obsessed Billy obviously features his guns. He tenses his muscular right hand, with thumb base bulging from his relentless practicing and using that finger to cock the hammer of his single-action revolver, fittingly nicknamed a thumbbuster. Billy presses his arm to push out his high-mounted holster to show off the revolver's butt, positioned for a fast draw. It's likely a Colt 44, since it would conveniently use the same 4440 cartridge as his Winchester 73 carbine in his left hand. And Billy exhibits that long gun in perfect side view to the camera. He also holds that carbine's barrel by its end, with one finger pressed to the muzzle, implied as a joke that in a second he could ambidextrously shoot you with either hand, drawing the Colt or swinging the long gun to his shoulder. Billy's beloved British boss, John Tunstall, likely gifted Billy that Winchester 73 carbine before his murder by the Santa Fe Ring. Tellingly, on April 1st, 1878, Billy risked his life to run from behind the adobe wall of the regulators' ambush killing in Lincoln of Ringite Sheriff William Brady to take back that gun from Brady's corpse, since Brady had confiscated it illegally from Billy 40 days earlier. And Billy's sweater may have been another Tunstall gift, looking like an Irish farmer's sweater, possibly from Tunstall's store. Its sentimental significance is implied, since cowboys didn't usually wear sweaters. Maintaining their self-image as gentlemen, as opposed to farmers, they wore jackets and vests. As to Billy's vest, one can see that its left side has a rounded collar, but the more narrow right side makes just a sharp, collarless line. Since the vest would have been broadcloth or possibly leather, it's unlikely that it could just fold inward. My guess is that shootist Billy wet the vest and folded the sharp crease to stiffen that right side to prevent its accidental floppy interference during a fast draw. Billy also urged you to notice his chunky shiner ring on his extended left pinky. He would have put it on for the photo, since its mirror-polished top needed to be protected by a carrying pouch. It was used by gamblers like Billy to cheat at cards. They'd roll that reflective top to the palm, then deal over it to see what cards the other players were getting. Billy's high boot shafts are notably wrinkled. That's because cowboys preferred soft leather. Another cowboy style featured little feet, like gentlemen, as distinguished from less prestigious farmers. For that fashion statement, cowboys would cram their feet into two small boots. So in some photos, one can see the cramped, bulging toes of tough guys brandishing firearms. Also, small boots is probably why cowboys were known for avoiding walking, even riding short distances. Billy's boots do look small in his Tintype, though it's impossible to know if he followed this trend. Also, Billy's exposed boot tops gauge his clothing layers, since they can't be stuffed in. He probably has on long underwear and 2 pairs of pants. Boots also had stacked heels like Billy's, not for fashion, but for gripping stirrups. This Tintype has perfect provenance. In 1880, Billy gave it to Dan Dedrick, a counterfeiter living 12 miles south of Fort Sumner, who bought John Chisholm's Bosque Grande Ranch. Dedrick was rumored to have his money printing press there. Billy sold Dedrick Russell's stock at his brother's livery stable in White Oaks, and Billy used Dan Dedrick's pushers of counterfeit bills, Billy Wilson and Tom Pickett, as herders for some of his rustling. During Billy's September to December 1880 Secret Service Santa Fe ring instigated pursuit under the guise of pursuing counterfeiters, Dedrick's brothers, Sam and Mose, were harassed. Taking no chances, Dan Dedrick fled to California. By then, Billy was famous Billy the Kid. Dedrick made sure to take the tintype with him. In California, Dan Dedrick lived near family, but never had children. But he liked the young wife of his Upham nephew. Her name was Elizabeth Upham. When Dan died at 90, the family learned that he'd willed the tintype to her. Elizabeth Upham later donated it with her sons, Steve and Art Upham, to the Lincoln County Heritage Trust in Lincoln, New Mexico, founded in 1976. In 1989, the Lincoln County Heritage Trust used Billy's tintype face for a computerized photo comparison study headed by famous forensic anthropologist Clyde Snow. It showed no match of small-chinned Billy the Kid imposter Brushy Bill Roberts to tintype Billy. In 1998, when I began my Billy the Kid research, I went to the Lincoln County Heritage Trust. I brought a photographer with a high-definition Hasselblad camera to photograph the tintype, but I was horrified by what I saw. There was no conservation. Arguably the most famous of Old West artifacts, the tintype, displayed in a large museum room, was merely in a foam core mat perched on a little pedestal and covered by a plexiglass box. When I looked at the tintype enlarged in the Hasselblad's viewfinder, I could see its emulsion curling up like scales of old paint on a fence, and there were black spots of deterioration. I was later told that someone from the Heritage Trust had also kept it on his coffee table at home while people smoked. So I took action. I contacted Elizabeth Upham, now deceased. She told me the tintype had been in perfect condition when donated, and for years prior, she kept it in a rosewood box on her dresser. Interestingly, she confirmed that Dan Dedrick had boasted to her about being a counterfeiter. Elizabeth said she had a contract with the Lincoln County Heritage Trust, but didn't know her rights. So I hired a lawyer for the Upham family. He discovered that their contract was limited to the trust being in business, and as luck would have it, he found that the trust was going out of business. The Uphams were free to reclaim the tintype. Soon after, Steve Upham simply walked into their Lincoln building. As he told me, he identified himself and said he was there to pick up the tintype, as well as the family's further donation of a tintype of Dan Dedrick and a letter by him. The person at the desk simply handed it all to him. So the tintype was saved from total destruction. It then stayed for years back in Elizabeth Upham's rosewood box. On June 25, 2011, the family sold the tintype at Brian LaBelle's Old West auction in Denver, Colorado. I was there with the family. Florida billionaire and Old West memorabilia collector Bill Koch won it at the evening auction for $2.3 million. He had said that he would not have stopped bidding and did not plan to leave without it. It should be noted that the Lincoln County Heritage Trust tintype is the image used for popular reproductions of Billy the Kid. Its defects, which I saw in the Hasselblad camera's viewfinder, have misled people's ideas about Billy Bonney's appearance. The first defect occurred at its creation. Its emulsion and varnish needed to dry before the tintype was put in its paper frame, but someone, maybe Billy, touched it too soon. It has fingerprint-smudged emulsion at the left side of the image's face, creating the big lopsided jaw of artists' renditions of Billy the Kid. Real Billy was called handsome. A reporter for the December 27, 1880, Las Vegas Daily Gazette interviewed just captured Billy for an article titled "The Kid," interview with Billy Bonney, the best-known man in New Mexico. He wrote, "He is in all quite a handsome-looking fellow, the only imperfection being two prominent front teeth." The tintype does show the buck teeth. The second defect is the blackening emulsion. In particular, the face is spotted, which I demonstrated by printing my photograph of it in high contrast. Those spots have tricked unsuspecting people into thinking they were real facial marks, and the spots played a part in Brushy Bill Roberts' Billy the Kid imposter hoax. In 1990, Brushy Bill backers used a Scott Acton from the University of Texas to attack the Lincoln County Heritage Trust's photo comparison debunking Brushy as Billy. But Acton retouched the tintype face to fake a match, though he slyly called it restoration. Jameson and Bean gave Acton's retouched Billy face in their 1998 Brushy backing book, The Return of the Outlaw Billy the Kid. Acton had used black emulsion blobs at the corners of Billy's small bow-shaped mouth to make it a long, straight mouth to match Brushy's. Acton also added round, stuck-out ears to Billy to match Brushy's. Lastly, the tintype, plus Bill Koch's $2.3 million for it, has spawned a hopeful crowd, knowing little Billy the Kid history, but dreaming of becoming rich, advertising their randomly found tintypes of acromegalic-chinned young men in funny hats, like these I created here for a spoof. Real Billy would have been amused, as he once told a reporter, "The laugh's on me this time."